Everyone thinks Fallout is an amazing game. They just disagree on how. Are you 40 years old and already like CRPGs with some good storytelling? Well, you might like the original Fallout games. Do you like exploring a dark 3D world where it feels like everything is trying to kill you with a heavy atmosphere? You'll probably enjoy Fallout 3. If Fallout 1 and 2 are too old for you, but you still want to have a game that heavily focuses on story, New Vegas is your game, if you mod it to not crash. Do you want shooting that doesn't feel terrible without the VAT system like in 3 and New Vegas? Then get Fallout 4, which also has base building if you're into that. If you want to play Fallout with some of your buds, then Fallout 76 is your game, and it easily has the best community in the franchise. I feel like the main reason for the division in the Fallout community is that it is one of the most tossed around franchises ever. It started as a B-tier project in Interplay, that over time got more funding as it was developed and surprisingly sold alright for the time. But after the creator of Fallout left due to company tensions like payment cuts, miscommunication, and people making decisions on the next game without him, he started his own company, Troika Games, and took some of the most influential people of Fallout 1 with them. Fallout 2 would continue development at a smaller division of Interplay known as Black Isle Studio, with the second Fallout seemingly not selling as well as the first. Interplay would then go on to attempt to publish many games, but failed to do so, such as a 3D Fallout, Baldur's Gate 3 Blackhound, and Van Buren. Funnily enough, the engine that they used at the time, NDL engine, was something that they were not experienced with, and eventually, due to inexperience and money, the 3D Fallout game was cancelled. But it turns out the NDL engine was actually a less advanced version of the Gamebryo engine, which would later be used by Bethesda to make Fallout 3, and then Obsidian to make New Vegas. Bethesda would eventually end up getting the rights to Fallout due to poor management at Interplay, with them needing to sell off the rights to Fallout 3 just to get employees paid what they were owed. And later the IP, due to not meeting the standards that they set for themselves for the cancelled Fallout Online game. But before Fallout was fully handed over to Bethesda, they also released some of the worst spin-offs with Brotherhood of Steel and Tactics, the latter of which was made by another division which wasn't Interplay or Black Isle themselves. So from here, you most likely know the story. Bethesda made Fallout 3, which basically put Fallout on the map for a lot of the fans today. They wanted to strike while the iron was hot, but was too busy making a small game known as Skyrim, so they had Obsidian contracted to work on something Fallout related. Originally, New Vegas was a DLC to Fallout 3, and reviewers could definitely tell that was the case at the time. But a small executive producer known as Todd Howard pushed strongly for it to be a full game, and thus New Vegas, instead of a DLC, was made to be its own spin-off title. There is a common misconception that Bethesda has nothing to do with New Vegas, which is false. Firstly, they handled the major creative barriers that Obsidian would be allowed to play in. So, they could not make a Fallout game in between 2 and 3, and the original location that Obsidian wanted the game to take place in was denied. Of course, Bethesda also handled the budget, marketing, almost all the QA, music licensing, and probably was the reason why Kim Kardashian had a Fallout-themed birthday party and Aaron Paul went to the New Vegas launch party. Some other criticisms of New Vegas' development is the Metacritic score affecting a bonus that could have helped Obsidian in some troubled times, and the fact that they were given 18 months to make New Vegas. Firstly, I do think it's important that people understand what a bonus is. It's an incentive for the game to do well that would sweeten the pot on top of what was already being paid for. It is something extra that didn't need to be done, but obviously, you want a spin-off of one of your best-selling games to do well, getting your newly bought IP to another studio. Sadly, they were off by 1 point to get the bonus they needed, but that's not really too much of a reason to get upset, in my opinion, and also in the opinions of people who actually worked on New Vegas. 18 months is a very short time to make a game from scratch, but thankfully they didn't have to make New Vegas from scratch. They had the robust Gamebryo engine and could cut development time by using assets from Fallout 3. But as senior designer Chris Avellone said, Fallout New Vegas needed to be downscoped, and production should have ended and testing began at least 2 months earlier than it was. There was also many systems altered like weapon animations that caused bugs, and there were so many bugs in New Vegas that a lot of the time given needed to be allocated to fixing the problems that Obsidian made themselves. And it's still launched in a terrible state, and is borderline unplayable without mods for a lot of people today. 18 months is impressive for what the game is now, but it definitely isn't a crazy amount that led to crunch time. A good example of a Fallout game that actually went into crunch time was Fallout 2. Even though they had the resources from Fallout 1, which took a little less than 4 years to make, they made Fallout 2 in 9 months. So it's been interesting to me to see that the most vocal and toxic fan base of any Bethesda published title would not look into this any deeper and blindly hate on other fandoms or Bethesda due to misinformation being spread into echo chambers. Now, I've never played New Vegas, but I've heard that one of the reasons it's so loved is because of the diverse and great choices you can make. And yet they see the only two companies who worked on 3D Fallout games as black or white, good or evil, and don't want to look into it any further. It seems that these delusional fans would think that there is some war for the Fallout IP going on in the background, and they want Microsoft to force Bethesda to allow Obsidian to either make another Fallout game or just own the IP outright. I'm not going to pretend that Bethesda is some holy game studio, but I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that Obsidian is either. The way that Bethesda handled the Mick Gordon situation, the 76 canvas bag, the initial launch of 76, and being the first to introduce microtransactions with Oblivion Horse Armor were all public instances of Bethesda being pretty scummy. But Obsidian has its own skeletons in its closet, like the racist art director of Avowed and stabbing one of its most important founders, Chris Avellone, in the back, in one of the foulest ways possible. But it's also crazy because Obsidian today is definitely not the same Obsidian that made New Vegas. After New Vegas, Obsidian was in a crisis. Many projects were cancelled, including the Xbox One exclusive Stormlands. They had to let go of tons of people, had to use Kickstarter to fund their next game, and they were trying their best to sell themselves to Microsoft for an undisclosed price. One of the reasons why Microsoft bought Obsidian was the upcoming online RPG Avowed, which was supposed to be the studio's magnum opus and be similar to the likes of Skyrim. But we all know how that turned out. Despite over 6 years of working on the game, it's clear the studio lacked the focus required to make such a game. They had 2 reboots, turning it from an online open world game into a single-player open zone game with a weak immersion, mediocre storytelling, and overall a bad launch. But before Avowed came out, there was The Outer Worlds, which brought back Tim Kaine in the director's seat along with Leonard Boyarsky for a brand new RPG set in space. It seemed very exciting, fans were eager to see what the creator of Fallout would do next. Commercially, The Outer World was a success. It sold over 5 million copies in 4 years, which makes it one of Obsidian's best-selling RPGs. But as a game, many hardcore RPG fans just found it to be alright, but was nowhere near the level expected out of the same studio who made New Vegas. Seemingly, the 2 best games from Obsidian are KOTOR 2 and New Vegas, which both happen to be games that were built on the backs of the engine and stories of other studios, and had a concrete deadline. It seems that the main thing Obsidian took from Black Isle and Interplay was the bad business practices and poor management that led to their decline. Another common misconception is that the majority of New Vegas team worked on Fallout 1, when only 6 of the New Vegas devs worked on Van Buren and even less worked on Fallout 1. So I don't really understand where this misconception comes from. These days Obsidian mainly makes 3 kinds of games: good small-scale RPGs, mediocre online focus games, and open zone mediocre RPGs. Alright, the Obsidian reign is over. Bethesda would then make Fallout 4, which was not received well by many RPG fans, but was considered great by the more casual audience. And Fallout 76 launched in a terrible state that was somehow even worse than Fallout New Vegas, but was understandably hated on for years. And these days the general opinion has shifted to being an alright game, since there was many years spent fixing the games and adding more content. But 76 launched in 2018, and we wouldn't see anything Fallout until 2024 with the Fallout TV show, which quickly shot up to being one of my favorite shows with only 1 season. But of course there were many Fallout fans that were very quick to look for any criticism, like when the show was being criticized for breaking canon due to fans not understanding how to read a chalkboard, or maybe they just didn't want to understand a simple timeline drawing just to have something to complain about. But most other criticisms or retcon claims by fans are just things that haven't been answered yet, which is great because that just means they have questions and they really want to get these answers for the upcoming seasons, especially about factions in the West Coast, which will be showcased in flashbacks for Season 2. They made a TV show that was faithful to the feeling of Fallout. It had an amazing story, characters, and it still feels fresh on rewatch. But yeah, Fallout fans are pretty divided, but I think despite the games being so different and handled by so many different studios, there is at least one game that's for everyone, which is nice. But if you want to see me try to beat New Vegas without crashing using the GOG preserved version, where they tried their best to fix New Vegas to be in a playable state, check out my Twitch.